Storm. How big, like how fast. Go in there. Yeah, that's what I
It's 7:30 a.m. I'll call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. This agenda was posted in the office of the county clerk of the 21st day on October 2021. Notice was sent to the West Bend Daily News, Express News, WIBD, WMBZ Radio, WTKM Radio, My Community Now, Hartford Times Press, Kewaskum Statesman, and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Everyone except Will Smeechek is here. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I think the consent agenda was pretty self-explanatory. Any comments or questions on that? If not, I would look for a motion. John and Marcy. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Against? All right, it passes. Discussion items.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna head up here and put the book on the screen for you. We talk about.
That would be good.
Good morning and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you see a rather short report on modifications to our current commuter express routes. What we were looking at is if I'm sure the committee is all aware about our ridership numbers for our commuter express after the stay-at-home order drastically reduced. If you look at the quarterly report, they are actually sneaking back up a little bit in a positive direction, about 200 more riders in the last month than the month before. So that is positive in a way. But we are looking at ways to modify those routes. To modify a route temporarily, we can do that. And we have combined two routes to do that modification. But to do more permanent modifications, you need to have a public hearing to do that. What we asked Coach USA, and we got those into your hands yesterday morning, is to look at those routes and see what routes are people actually currently utilizing out there. And then not only what routes are they on, but then where are they actually getting off and on for that bus. And to see that, can we merge potentially more routes or eliminate routes, or can we eliminate certain stops? Because if you have no one going off at a certain location, again, the driver would typically ask the riders where they're coming on and off, so they don't technically stop there. But most days, but on the way back, you kind of have to, right? Because you don't know who's standing by the bus stop. Are they waiting for you? Or are they waiting for some other bus? So we're looking at those two as the opportunities. Tom with Coach USA is here today. He had a chance to look at those numbers a little bit. I think they were in his hands late last week and in our hands as well, late last week or early Monday. So we haven't had a whole time to dive into the numbers that we've shared with you yesterday morning. But we wanted to make sure that we started that conversation at this meeting to kind of go through kind of some preliminary numbers on what's out there. We don't have any recommendations for you at this time, but on the bottom of the sheet that's up there, I think it's important to note that this is pandemic ridership only. I think everybody understands that right now. We're still under the pandemic. So you can see there's an absence of like GE healthcare staff, federal staff, and academics on Innovation Drive. So we also wanted to go back and look at our data pre-pandemic to see what our ridership was at those locations kind of pre-pandemic too. Not that we eliminate one because we know people are still doing work from home. Again, we certainly believe that a lot of people are doing the hybrid model. Either A, they're not coming back at all, or B, they're doing some kind of hybrid model of in office 2 or 3 days a week and out of office 2 or 3 days a week, something along those lines. So what you see in front of you is a lot of numbers, and I apologize for the lack of description on those, but again, we're just starting to look at that. And So you can kind of see some of the routes we highlighted were the ones where there was zeros at those stops. Again, it was a relatively short sample. Some we did in spring and some we did now again in fall. So we're looking at different riderships. Again, southbound and northbound, you'll see each one was highlighted in that general direction. So not only do we have the individual stops, which is the spreadsheet I just had up, but then let me sneak to the top of here. But you also have the routes, right? Route 1, Route 2, and where they go. So again, the purple ones are the medical center and VA route. And the other ones are all downtown routes, if I'm not mistaken.
They're downtown, the yellow ones are also, just the most right.
Well, yellow.
Over 4 people per day.
Also, yellow is highlighted because they had more than 4 riders per day on those routes. So you see a little bit of a higher ridership. So to kind of explain the routes, I don't know, Joy, if you want to explain the routes, we can certainly bring up a map. But our commuter express that goes down to the medical college basically stops at all 3 of the park and rides in Washington County. We stop at obviously the one on Paradise, the one in Richfield, and the one in Germantown. And then they head down from there down to the medical college directly, correct? And then from the medical college, they go to the VA. So the medical college, if you don't know, is by Watertown, Plank Road, Fredericton, all those other hospitals that are there. And then they go on to the VA, which is near Miller Park, and head back. So that's kind of, if you want to think about that, that's our VA route. The other routes that go downtown basically take the freeway to 9094 by the Zoo interchange and head off on, is it 16th they get off on? 35th. So the 35th Street Viaduct is kind of by the domes going south. So you imagine they kind of get down by that Marquette campus, right, on the north side of the roadway, and they get off the freeway there, head down Wisconsin, correct? Head down Wisconsin and have a series of stops along there. So hit Marquette High School, Marquette College, and then all the way to downtown. So that's kind of our 2 route combinations. So one is kind of a direct line to the VA and the medical college. That one's more or less a direct line to downtown. Obviously, they had Zoo interchange work a couple years ago. Again now. There's talk about 9094 reconstruction between the Zoo interchange and by Miller Parkway coming up soon too. So obviously, when we have those situations, we got to make modifications, to our routes and times and stuff like that. Again, those are temporary due to construction, but something we certainly look at and do. And even now, right, with timing of that we got to modify our routes and our timings because of the construction that's going on down there, and the time it takes to get through that. So we don't have a recommendation for you today as far as routes, do we? As far as what routes to look at eliminating or combining? I know Joy had a chance to look at this yesterday.
So it'd be interesting, with the specific numbers, with specific routes to reduce. We don't have that today because it's something that we would need a public hearing to do. And also when you reduce it, you have to do a lot more rescheduling. So it's not going to be just we're going to take this one out and this one out, with this one out, and we'll say what times do we want to serve and how can we best get people down there during that. So right now, I think that we could reduce it down to 15 runs total from the 23 that we have. So it would be about a 30% reduction. So that's what we're looking at, and our policies state that you would do any kind of major service reduction, and with stop policies also that we need to have public input before we do it. So that's the direction that we're going now, and asking for that.
Right. What we'd like to do is get this in front of you this month, and then look at having a public hearing to get their comments in. Again, the next scheduled meeting for you is the day before Thanksgiving at 7:30 in the morning. We're looking at potentially moving that meeting. That's certainly on the agenda later on to the following Wednesday to have a night meeting. That's December 1st to get that opportunity for the public to comment. You can imagine the day before Thanksgiving at 7:30 a.m. is probably not the best time to have a public hearing. So we're looking at potentially the next week after that. And then following that public hearing, we would take those comments into account and then look at those modifications maybe at your December meeting as for final. So you take the public comments at that point, we go back, look at redesign, then at your December meeting, I know it's again near the end of the month with the holidays, and then make those effective changes in 2022. Would be just kind of laying it out for you that we would bring those recommendations to make sure they're out there and available for the public to comment on them. So next few weeks, we'd be doing that in-house, provide those to you and the public, then they'd have the public hearing. If we get all the notices and stuff posted in time, and then come back to you with December for the actual decision. And certainly have your comments after the public hearing as well. But just kind of to lay that out there that our ridership is still, it's creeping up, no doubt about that, but just looking at what kind of long-term modifications should we make to that?
Do we have any questions or comments? I would say, having been to a couple doctors and things lately, the medical community is the most serious about taking precautions for COVID. So obviously, we don't want to get rid of those routes until we know what it's going to be post-pandemic, if we ever get to those days. So I assume that's right. Is that what you're thinking?
Oh, yeah, keeping the medical.
Yeah.
center, right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, continuing service, medical center and the VA. Yes.
Yeah, so what we're really looking for today, out of the discussion is, do you want us to continue down this path that we just laid out? Or do you want us to keep status quo and the system going as it is right now? That's kind of the two lanes we can kind of go down, right? Do you want to make some modifications? Whatever those are, again, you'll have complete input on those. Or B, do you say, don't waste your time, Scott. We like what we've got. Let's just keep it as is. So that's kind of the direction we're looking for today is, do you want us to keep going down that route? That's your policy decision, if you will. Or do you want us to not?
So you're looking for
A consensus of what you're.
Supervisor Bishop?
I think we've been discussing this for several years already. So even though we have the issue of the pandemic right now, keeping the status quo is not acceptable.
Okay.
And I believe that we're on the right track, looking at making some modifications at this time. And I think those modifications will help us with our long-term decision on what we're going to be doing with this particular part of our transit program. Looking through the packet that came with the next section, from Sewer Pack, they had predicted the usage of the bus going up, and it didn't. It went down from that point.
Yeah.
And people like having their own cars. So it doesn't make sense to spend all this money to supplement that fewer riders. I realize there's a need for some of it, but some of them will have to make an adjustment in their schedule to make it work.
Supervisor Newman?
Thank you. I agree. This is very costly if you look at the county as a whole, the number of the people that it benefits is very few. And the cost per ride is just crazy prices on that. I don't know what the breakdown is, and I'm not asking for that now, but what we get in grants to cover this, $100 a ride. I'm assuming the 2% recovery is the fares that we get.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. We need to do something different. This is a lot of cost for a little gain.
Chairman?
What?
So yeah, so we, as you are hopefully recall, we did receive quite a bit of CARES, CRISA, and ARPA funds for transit. But obviously, the longer we can extend those funds, the better. That just by saying, oh, we have the funds, let's just throw it here and let's ignore the problem. But I do appreciate your willingness to say let's look at it head on and hopefully we can stretch those dollars further down the road with both of our transit programs.
Yeah, I believe I brought this up before too. On those routes where you have one individual or one person every other day, do we also have the taxi service that could accomplish the same thing with, or do they not go out of county or?
Relatively speaking, I mean, we do have the cross county to Ozaki County, and we
Okay.
do go down into Waukesha County into Menominee Falls to the hospital, and there's a care center. Linden Grove, I believe it is, right next to the hospital down there. So we go slightly into those counties, but not all the way to downtown.
Okay.
Our current service.
Is that something that we could look into as an alternate plan? Because if taxis are cheaper to run. I mean, I know you guys
Yeah,
have,
Not really because of duplication of services with
Okay.
other counties.
okay, thank you.
Right, yeah. So there are, but we'll get to some of the other solutions though in the next.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at options or a taxi drops them off at the county line and then Milwaukee can pick it up from there. You know, at least that way they have an option if we're cutting back the, like you said, it's a smart move to change
Right.
for times.
And the next agenda item will be talking about some of those options and which ones are palatable and which ones may not be.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree. I think it's pretty clear that the members present have reached a consensus that you should continue to work on this, so thank you. So we'll move on to the next item. Oh, sorry. It's okay. Mr.
Yeah, I agree, having the ARP and the CARES money helps with this, but I mean, you look at the ridership, you look at how things are moving forward. And, the old adage, throwing good money after bad. I mean, it's fine. It's not coming out of, all of it's coming out of our taxpayers here pockets, but it's coming out of taxpayers' pockets. So, yeah, we really need to reimagine how this is going to work going forward because it's not working right now. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to the next item. Scott?
Yes, thank you, Joy, our transit manager, put together the following report. As Chairman Creepall just mentioned, reimagining. So we're looking at by the year 2024 to reimagine our commuter express and what that looks like. So we put forth together several options that are in here. We're certainly open to other options and considerations that are in there right now. What we're looking for today is kind of a little bit of a direction to kind of kick this off, if you will. What your thoughts are, as Supervisor Shadron just pointed out, smaller buses or taxis or something like along those lines. And those are really what we're looking for today, is kind of a little bit of a direction as far as what you think the commuter express will look like into the future. Back when this started many, many, many years ago, there was a reverse commute of bringing people from Milwaukee area, if you will, up to Washington County. That kind of faded away. Lack of ridership, is that something we want to pursue and stuff like that? So if you want, I can start this, Joy, and kind of kick it off, unless you want to have at your report there. But we did was pretty much provided 5 options, if you will, to look at in this report. And we can kind of go through those options, not maybe point by point, but just kind of high level those. As kind of we put down together what we think were benefits and what we consider drawbacks of those, and what's you're willing to look at and to scope. So do you want to?
Yeah, so we'll just take it over and start walking through this report. So anytime we're doing a redesign or a major change, I would start with goals and what we're really trying to do. So the goals I listed is increased transit connections to and from Milwaukee County. And that's going from Milwaukee County is something we don't have currently, and it's something we've discussed. It comes up often. Another goal is to increase transit ridership overall, reduce the cost per ride on the WCCE, develop a commuter route to and from Hartford, which is recommended in the 2015 Transit Development Plan, and develop reverse commute options, which is also recommended in the 2015 Transit Development Plan. So you all received a copy of the transit development plan, our last one that we have done. So these are, our comprehensive guidelines and roadmaps to regional transit development. And that sewer pack puts together for us. We do have the option of getting another one done. But we would be third in line and they take over a year to get through. So, what other option would be to go through and give sewer pack one or two things, very concise things that we want them to look into. And then they would be able to look into that for us and just do the planning and help us with the engagement and outreach and develop a plan for us on one of these options. So we'll run through these options and what we would hope to be accomplishing with them and what they might look like. And then these, this came about through conversations, of course, with this committee and also with Sewer Pack and with Milwaukee County Transit, as we're talking about the development of their rapid transit bus line. So that is rapid transit is going to be a game changer in Milwaukee, and they're installing this bus rapid transit from the medical center all the way to downtown. So what bus rapid transit is, it is a bus that goes on the road. It has a dedicated lane for much of the route. It comes every 10 minutes. And it has elevated platforms to access it. So the time on and the time off is reduced. So it says they will reduce the time downtown to get downtown by about, what was it, so 8 minutes each run.
Potentially.
Potentially, right. So it has that. It also has, right of way with the lights and all that. So it can move a lot faster. So Milwaukee Transit has been working with us, with the WCCE, about where we can stop along that line and potential changes. But one of the other things that they're looking into is having all commuter buses stop at terminus points of the bus rapid transit. So within their system, that's one of the things that they're looking at. And then having this single transit option going down, reducing congestion on Wisconsin Avenue into downtown. So with that in mind, we can run through some of the options that we have here with the WCCE. So our option one, which we've already discussed doing, is to reduce it to a skeleton service in 2022, requiring a public hearing. So we know that we're going to be doing that, regardless of any of the long-term options that we put in place.
Can you define skeleton service? I mean, you talked before about going from 23 routes down to 15. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so it is making a decision about which areas we're going to serve and what times we're going to be there. And so going down to possibly 45 minutes between buses and, not going any midday routes, not doing the after 9 a.m., having that last one out at 6 p.m. And that would be the skeleton service. So it's a minimum service to serve commuters.
And that would be what we just talked about earlier, right? That reduction or whatever that looks like, whether it's, down to 20, 19, 15. But we come back. So
Thank you.
Yes, so doing that, it will put our service more in line with the ridership and demands that we have. Anytime, even with this, anytime you reduce the number and the times of the service, it reduces the ridership. So there will be one or two people, our numbers now, there will be a few people who will choose not to ride, if we change the times because it's not convenient or they're not able to anymore. Doing this does not address reverse commute, keeping the same routes that we have, and does not include any service to Hartford. So it is what we have now, going downtown, going to the medical center, very minimum service level. And we have that option to just keep that going until it's dead, pretty much, or it gets better. And we want to grow it. Do half full on this one. So number two, we would instead focus on in-county transportation. So we could do freeway flyers from West Bend to Hartford and stop at the Menominee Falls Park and Ride. And there is an MCTS route number 79 freeway flyer from Menominee Falls that goes to downtown. It's operated by Waukesha County. And Waukesha County is also having some of the same discussions that we are. But we can get people to Menominee Falls. We could run it in both directions. And, so we're really making that focus on our in-county needs and in-county transportation. It would reduce the cost of our current service. We would offer service from Hartford to Menominee Falls, which is something that is missing at this time. And we do not need a motor coach to do it. So we could have a smaller vehicle and just have more frequent service. So the drawbacks, the biggest drawback is that it is fully dependent on the Route 79 continuing in Waukesha County. If people are trying to get downtown right now, that is their only option to do it. So they would need to transfer to get downtown, which would increase the commute time. There's also a separate fare card for MCTS. So it's something that we could work on with them. But anytime we're transferring to the MCTS system, they would need to have a separate way to pay.
The app that people are working on now is run through Coach USA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have like more than 100 people have downloaded it. So there is interest in that. And they're using it, it's working well. So the sheet with the yellow highlights on it, it shows you a little bit about what the double transfer would look like. So the first line is picking specific areas and specific stops along the route that we have now. The first line is what the current ride time is. It's 1 hour and 8 minutes from Paradise to Jefferson and Jackson, which is downtown. If we went with two transfers, or transfer to the 79, and then if they again had to transfer to the BRT, that time increases to 1 hour and 44 minutes.
That's on page 175. It's up on your screen too. So we say drawbacks are, excuse me, we say drawbacks are if you transfer, right? There's time to get off the bus. There's time to wait for the next bus. There's time to get on to the next bus. So just understand that we talk, 20 minutes or 10 minutes. It's in the heat of summer. It's in the cold of winter that those people are waiting there. Even at the bus rapid transit, Milwaukee County right now is not interested in putting in a heated shelter because they're worried that homeless would then come and stay in the heated shelter because it's in the Watertown Lake parking lot, just west of the freeway, right by Freighter, the medical college. So understand that when we talk about transfers, that it's in the heat of summer, it's in the cold of winter, and they could be waiting for the next bus 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. The bus rapid transit every 10 minutes, except Route 79. We have to do our best to kind of coordinate that. That's a little easier because Pilgrim Road is not as lot of traffic unless you get a crash on 41 in the morning. That can be a pretty consistent route in our county yet. But just to point that out there, when we talk about transfers, that's where we had Milwaukee County put these numbers together. They're estimates right now. So we want to make sure we're clear on that. And we also, I want to just give a shout out to Milwaukee County Transit Service, MCTS. They've been fantastic to work with. We have an excellent now working relationship with them and their public works director, Donna Martin Brown. We've been meeting with them on a nearly monthly basis, either by Zoom. They've been fantastic to work with and provide us numbers, and they want to be a partner in this conversation going forward and how this would look like in the future. And certainly with the reverse commute, we need them to get people to either the bus rapid transit or to station or to Pilgrim Road or even onto our buses downtown. So I just wanted to point that out there. They've been really beneficial to have them and Coach USA as well as partners in this.
So when we're looking at number 2, again, this youth is really, Insular is looking at what we can do to serve the employment needs of Washington County. And taking people to park and ride to commute is an option, but also focusing on bringing people in. And fastest ways that we could do that in county. So number 3, it looks like a similar idea, but it is much more of a regional transportation option. So 3 is creates a I-41 and I-45 corridor flyer. So we'd be looking at doing this in 2024. So for this, we would merge WCCE services with the MCTS 79. So that would allow us to start up in West Bend, and our last stop would be in Menominee Falls. So we would stop in Waukesha County, pick up those commuter riders, share the cost with Waukesha County, and we could either take them all the way downtown, or we would stop at Wyatown Plank Road, so they could connect with the BRT and continue the service down to the VA and the medical center, because that portion is not being served by anyone else. So, excuse me. Yeah, so we would have the service from Hartford, down, from West Bend down. And we could, if we don't go downtown all the way, if we're transferring people at the BRT, we could turn around and take people back who were coming off of the BRT up into Washington County, again, with the going to Hartford and to West Bend. So it would create the back and forth freeway flyer that does not exist at this time. So the drawbacks of that, commuters would still need to transfer, and it could increase commute times by up to 20 minutes if you're going downtown. And the commuters would still need a separate fare. And then we're also just, if they're transferring, I was looking at the experience change between going from a coach bus to the Milwaukee County City Bus. So that may deter some people who would otherwise be riding. Some considerations. So the combination, we've had conversations with Waukesha County about the 79 and about this option. So it is something that they are having analyzed as part of their transit development plan. So their transit development plan is in the works right now. It's actually finishing up. And Sewer PAC is looking into that as a recommendation. So that would really, if that comes out as a recommendation, we'll have more information about it for us to launch ours if we choose to go that route. Also, this is something that it sounds like a fantastic idea. We don't know what the actual need is at this point. So we, as you're working in transit, working with planners, we know that the ridership patterns are, but it's really with all of these options, we'd want to have public hearings, we'd want to have or information sessions. We really need to connect more with stakeholders to get a better sense. So we're not launching something new and we think is wonderful that no one wants.
And that includes like workforce development and stuff like that. One thing we're concerned, like, yes, it sounds great to have the reverse commute, but will people actually use it? Right. But there's jobs out there all over the place right now. And will they actually, come up to Washington County and drive that 40 minutes on our trip up to Hartford, right, to Quad Graphics or to Serigraph, and we're here in West Bend, right? So that's one of the questions too we have to answer going, we had it before and the ridership just wasn't there. And then we had to work with those local businesses to get that last mile commute, right? Either with our shared ride taxi service or them to provide a van or something to get people from the park and ride lot, like here in West Bend, we drop them off at Paradise. That's where we go, right? Because you got to keep that circle going. That the businesses or something, we still have to get those people that last mile, they call it, to their work. So that's the piece of the puzzle we got to also look at. And that's why it takes a little time to get those stakeholders involved and get, like, workforce development and EWC and the local business community to say, hey, are you willing to step up and have a van that comes here twice a day and get the people to and from, or is that something that we have to provide them as additional service, to make that happen? So there's those conversations too that need to be had later on.
So the fourth option is, this is just throw it out there and see if it works. Replace WCCE with an intercity bus service. So intercity bus is like a Badger bus or mega bus or Greyhound. It has designated stops. It picks people up and then just goes to bus terminals. Not necessarily along with a commuter schedule. It just does several times throughout the day. So I guess this is something that was looked into previously. There wasn't a lot of interest by the bus companies to provide that service. But if it's something we want to look into again, it's an option of something that's out there, a different type of service.
Yes, we did look at this several years ago. There just wasn't any interest from those companies to make more stops. The more times they stop, the slower their service gets. They're trying to get from point A to point B with as many riders as they can and not pick up one or two riders at a stop and take 5-10 minutes. So, and then they were going right to the downtown and to their, well, now is their modal station. So then they still got to transfer once they get down there. So unlimited times.
Mhm. And then the last option that is always on the table is to eliminate the WCCE without replacement. And that would definitely give us some cost savings. The drawback once we do it, well, we've talked about it, is a permanent thing, and it eliminates the transit connection with Milwaukee County. It's something that was looked at in the 2015 TDP and not recommended at the time. We don't know what they would recommend now for that. So to analyze the need and to move forward with any of these things, we'd want to definitely engage sewer pack in this. We are third in line for a transit development plan, but we can present one or two options. We talked about engaging the community. Another option we have, if sewer pack is unable to meet our timeline deadlines, and I have asked if they'd have the staffing available to be working on one or two of these projects. Haven't heard back yet, but they're letting us soon. There are planning grants available right now. It's 5307 is 100% federal funds to look at planning for services affected by COVID-19. So if we want to act on that, which you have to do it fairly quickly, information session is there's one in early November, right? And then at that point, we would look at engaging a private consultant to help us out with planning. Some other considerations. Okay, sorry.
So comparing that to possible sewer pack planning, we have a feel for pluses and minuses.
No.
The official answer is no. We haven't gone down that private route yet with anybody to see what that looks like and what services they can provide. We obviously know our transit development plan, and a lot of our planning is done by sewer pack. The other planning we do is in-house with Deb Zilski and her new department is kind of our planning. So we would hopefully engage that department. They're going to be very busy with housing. This is probably surprise news to them if they're watching this right now. But is that it might be the quickest option is to go down that route if SurePac's not able to look at this one item or two items that we want them to look at. So that's why I want to make sure we put it out there as an option going, well, SERPAC hasn't gotten back to us. That's not a great sign, right? And so we want to make sure we have another option out there to look at this over the next 2 years. And that grant funding that Joy was able to find was important. We also have to find a consultant that does this, who's done something along this lines already. And so are those people, in Wisconsin, are they national firms? And what we just, do they know our region enough to provide that information? So, SERPAC's done a lot of transportation and transit stuff in our region for many, many years. So they have a lot of those connections, even with the local, business community and stuff like that, to find those answers. So a little bit hesitant going down that route, but if SERPAC can't come through for us on this one, that'd be something that we'd have to seriously consider and look at. And maybe it's a partnership between the two at some level too. Maybe they can't do everything, but maybe they're willing to partner and have that other firm take a lead, and they can certainly help us review and look at the data behind the scenes.
Oh, boy. I'm definitely interested in, the talk with manufacturers. We have to know if there's an interest, and from what I've heard, they're screaming for help. Go and get workers to Hartford is big. I didn't hear Germantown mentioned at all. Do we have anything from the Germantown manufacturers? I know there's a bunch of them.
In a twist of fate, the UWM SERPAC in Waukesha County, we're doing a study right now on bringing people back up to Menominee Falls. When Joy brought that to my attention a little over maybe a month ago or so, I quickly contacted SERPAC, say, can we be part of that? And why weren't we asked to be part of that? If they're coming all the way to Menominee Falls, Germantown and Richfield, and their 2 industrial parks up to 145 would have made complete sense. The answer was no. So that's something that certainly we would have loved to be a part of, and to be even made aware that they were actually applying for that grant with the 3 communities. But yes, it is definitely in our minds that reverse commute. That's why you can get right to the Richfield Park and Ride lot, which is up by Cabela's, to get them there, but also potentially with the transit development plan that Waukesha's finishing up on, and the work SERPAC's doing with Milwaukee, UWM, and Waukesha County. We can maybe look at that corridor as well. That we realize that corridor is very important. There's a lot of industrial parks in that area, 2 in Germantown now, 1 in Richfield. That if we can't get them all the way up to Hartford because of the time constraint, people might not want to sit on that for a $20, $25 an hour job, but maybe they'll get up to Richfield or Germantown, and then maybe those other people that were in those areas will be willing to drive up to Hartford or West Bend. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at going, all right, maybe we won't pull them all the way up to West Bend because of time, but maybe we can pull them up to Germantown or Richfield, which then opens up other workforce for the Richfield, for the West Bend and Hartford. So that's kind of the logic, if you will, the theory anyway. Milwaukee County Transit has worked its way into Washington County along Highway Q to Menominee Falls Park and Ride lot, Industrial Park on Highway Q between Pilgrim and 145, and also up into like the Fleet Farm Walmart area. So they have snuck up into our area, and that's certainly conversations we'd have with them too, if they're willing to. And that's the conversation. Are they willing to sneak up a little bit further? So.
Yeah, in fact, no, one more piece about the research grant, or this grant with UWM, it really is research. So they're testing out if it's better to take someone to the county line and then have the employers come and pick them up, or to have a flex route system that takes someone all the way to that last mile. So once they're done with that research, then we can absolutely copy it. And once we know the answer, we can absolutely copy what they did and implement something.
Do we have a
It is-
timeline on that
It
research?
is so close.
It's research.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not ask them for the timeline on it. I honestly don't know, Supervisor Bishop. I did not ask them how long that was going to be, but I know they're just starting out. So we thought it was a great time to get on the ground floor and get going on it.
Yeah. Definitely contacting them, stay in touch. Yeah, so I think that covers, the other little consideration, if we do ask Sewer Pack to do a transit development plan, and that is something that they do need a formal ask to do. There was a notice that there was employment transportation need going between Hartford, Slingard, and West Bend is not being met. So if we ask them to do a transit development plan, that's something we may want to touch on also. If we can do some sort of enhanced transportation between those three communities.
Right. We obviously currently have our shared ride taxi program, but that's kind of maxed out. So we're looking at some other kind of flexible bus system, if you will. So that was in there, but that's, not what we're looking at today with the Commuter Express, but just to kind of want to make sure we include that in there because that transit development plan was a long document. So just want to make sure we highlighted a couple things out of that for you. So with that, we're certainly looking for any recommendations you have right now. And of course, I know you're just throwing this at you and we certainly can bring this back for future discussion too, as we roll along. It doesn't have to be decided today, but we'd like to get a little bit of direction. Kind of say, hey, what one of these you want some more information on? Are you willing to pick one of these? Say, hey, start down that road and take a look at that type of a system or what you're looking at. So that's kind of direction we're looking at today. We know we got to get this thing reconfigured, and 2 years seems like a long time. But with the federal government and state government and grants and stuff, it's a very short timeline, extremely short, or any other adjective you can put in front of that or adverb. So with that, certainly turn it back over to the chairman.
I see most of the microphones are lit up, so we'll start with Super.
Thank you. So we as a committee and even as a county board, we look at this from a very different angle, a very high level review. And I really would like to know, put you on the spot. You guys are deep into this. I'd like to know what your recommendation is of these options. Do you have an opinion? I mean, if it's 5, eliminate this. I'm curious. I would like to know that. Because is this a sinking ship? That's what we need to know.
Well, I'll answer that one.
Thank you.
I think our current system is challenged right now. And to keep operating it as it is just isn't going to work long term. I think with people working from home, and as I think Supervisor Bishop said, people like their cars. So I think that the current system isn't a long-term solution. So I think we need to look at these, looking at our transportation development plan and listen to people in the community. They're hurting for workers right now. And I think to dismiss it and to do number 5 and eliminate it without revisiting that right now at this crucial time with our housing initiative, stuff like that, would probably be a little bit of a lack of foresight. So I think at least having the opportunity to look at it, study that reverse commute, even if it's just this one more time, and we can look at that and maybe the numbers come back and going, you know what, people aren't going to come up to Hartford for 40 minutes. They're not going to come to West Bend. There's no way to get them there the last mile. That might be the thing going, yep, the reverse commute just isn't going to work. We're hopeful it will. We're hearing that in the community. I think you are hearing that community with lack of jobs or lack of people to fill the jobs, not lack of jobs. But I think we should give it every effort to look at that for the business members of our community and community in general to see if that is possible and we can make that happen in a fiscally and financially responsible way. So it's everything we look at. But I would, we looked at this as kind of option number 3 going, we heard that in the past back in 2015. I think it's actually stronger now as far as the need for workers, that we should at least engage that community and look at that for them. And if we can provide that, like I said, financially responsible manner, it makes sense that would be the direction we'd like to look at. Again, we might look at the numbers and you may look at those numbers going, it doesn't make any sense. Like right now, right? $200 a ride. You might look at that in the future going, well, if it's $90 to get the person here and back, is that really, worth it or whatever the number happens to be? So, but I think we would like to have the opportunity to look at that before a complete, once you shut down a program like this, it's very hard to get it back. That if we hear screaming, 2 years from now about need for workers in the reverse commute, it's going to be very difficult, or 4 years from now, excuse me, if you do shut it down, to start it back up again. So that would be, our look at it. Again, just because we're looking at it, and if we have a consultant or sewer pack, doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? Because it still has to come back to you and the board, and you're going to be the funding mechanism and looking at this. But I think it's worth our staff time to take a look at that and to see if that's feasible to do. Too long of an answer?
No, that was fine. Thank you. I'll leave or end with my opinion on it is I agree. I'm not ready to say, let's get rid of it. I think we need to review it. But it's very difficult for me. I don't know about the other committee members to say, well, let's look at 2 and 3 and 4, because at least I don't know all the data and all the information and the details behind that to point to one of these options, other than say, yes, we need to do something to try to make this more efficient to the taxpayers here. So I just giving you my opinion. It's very difficult for me to pick one of those other than to say, I'm not ready for number 5, if that makes sense.
Like 3 does give you kind of the broadest of options to keep kind of the current system, but we'll still be looking, even with number 3, looking at what we did with kind of number 1, right? Should we stop at Pilgrim Road? Should we go all the way down to the bus rapid transit at Watertown Plank? And what does that look like? So that's still all included, in that number 3. It's just a matter of, can we get those reverse commutes, and where should we stop the bus? Should we go all the way downtown? Should we stop at Watertown Plank? Should we stop it at that? That bus rapid transit scheduled to start fall of next year. So again, these numbers that they're showing us are all estimates. So it might run better than they thought. It might not run as good as they hope.
So again, with the giving it another chance option would be my opinion, especially that we have funding to carry us through a little bit. Eventually it might be number 5, but I don't think at this time. So thank you.
I really like the idea of a hub, the Menominee Falls hub. Like the initial sewer pack was, the WCCE was meant to bring workers up. I mean, that's the original. We're working towards it now with you talked about it with the next generation housing, workforce development, trying to get workers up here. If we don't get the workers up here, our manufacturing is it's gonna move away from and take that economic benefit away with it. So reimagining it and dedicating it towards having a workforce move forward, move up, I think is the way to go here. Because obviously we look at the numbers, moving people down from here downtown, really, I mean, we're just subsidizing a very few people, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. But if we can work and identify those workers from the city and find a way to get them up here, have that hub at Menominee Falls where they can go to Germantown, Richfield, they can go to West Bend, they can go all over the place if we work with, and I know we are working with our manufacturers to get this done with our businesses. So they're buying into this concept. So it may take some time, the pace of government is way too slow for all of us, right? We see a need, we see a problem, we want to fix it, and it just takes forever. Yeah, I like the idea of the hub. If we can work something like that, I think this could actually work. So thank you.
No, most of my comments are already made, but one thing I would like to add, do you have any current maps of the routes, some kind of visual or something that we could look at? I mean, I see all the numbers and stuff the same, but
Yeah.
to have a map just so we can look at that and say, oh yeah, that road is, we're duplicating things here or we're doing stuff there, and yeah, how many stops there are. I mean, maybe that would help us also, even in the public information
Oh, yeah.
thing, having those visual maps will say, hey, look, it's right here. It would just add, So any other comment too is obviously was it the federal government that started the Joseph project? So there are other things out there that, might work either in combination or instead of this stuff. So that's it. Thank you.
I'm in agreement with everyone else. We need to do something. We can't just let it die. I think it's too early for that. But like Supervisor Creefall said, we don't want to subsidize the very few at a big cost. So, somehow customizing the plans is what we need to do. And I too don't know all the nuts and bolts. So we look to you guys to make a suggestion and explain it. And I think we're ready to make changes.
And I would think our recommendation would be number 3 is looking at it again. That's reverse commute, looking at potential hubs and how do we get people down there and back up to make this as viable as possible.
Scott, I was just wondering about EDWC and have you worked with them? What are they selling when they're trying to entice new companies to come into Washington County? And they have a good handle on industry. And I would think they could partner with you.
I mentioned it earlier. We want to talk to our economic development and all that kind of stuff. We have not talked to them yet about this, right? Because right now there is no reverse commute. There isn't. So that's one of the partners we want to make sure we get in touch with to see what they know and where the need really is, right? Hartford Area Development Corporation would be another one, right? We would talk to them. We talked to them back in 2015, right? They were instrumental in the housing initiative, right? Back in 2015, they're involved in the transit development plan going, we need workers, we need workers, we need workers, right? So engaging all those stakeholders as much as we possibly can to see what the need is. And I think anecdotally, we all know there's a need for workers here in Washington County, just anecdotally, but yes, where exactly they are. And like I mentioned earlier, that if there's a couple industrial parks in Germantown, maybe up to Richfield, maybe we can entice Milwaukee County to sneak into our county for a mile or two and pay for that route. Right. So they're not going to do it out of the, just like we wouldn't, do that for them, but we might have to pay them to come up and say, hey, bring your riders all the way up and have a stop here in Germantown or West Bend. And there are certain rules and restrictions for that too. So we have to work with them on that, but that's certainly something we would want to look at.
Good. Any other comments?
Yeah. Kind of going with what Scott was talking about, just because if we say, well, let's do 3, it's still flexible.
Oh, yes. Oh,
And I'm really glad to hear how much intergovernmental cooperation there is on this right now between Milwaukee County, Waukesha County. I mean, it's a regional issue. And so it's only right to look at it all together. So keep up the good work.
Those dialogues with the manufacturers, maybe that's a key piece. The ones that are willing to pick up people at a stop with their company van or whatever, they're meeting us halfway. And that's, that kind of thing might really get the wheels rolling. Sorry, the pun, but I think it's a good idea.
No, certainly as you're right, trying to write the project he mentioned, as well as, maybe the industrial park itself would they'll chip in for a van or something like that. So all those kind of things, right? And who can help coordinate that and stuff. So that's the Joseph project. So that's the kind of stuff we would like to look at.
So have we given you the input that you need?
Are we okay with proceeding with looking at number 3? Obviously, as you know, everything comes back to you and different options. And we bring back that probably more often than you'd like to look at once we find and bring this back, periodically. It wouldn't just be, oh, here's the plan, we're done. It would be, in pieces and steps and updates along the way.
Committee, are we in agreement? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Now,
Joy. The transit development plan. I think that's a key component is to get on that list from Sewer PAC. They are looking for an official recommendation from Washington County on to go ahead and get that updated. It's last updated in 2015. That now we don't know the exact timeline that's going to be, whether it's going to be next year or 2 years, but it seems like it's a logical. It's not like it's only 2 years old. So it'd be logical to get that updated as well, especially with all the changes that may be coming. our way.
Can we officially do that and get in that line and still ask for specific things like you talked about up front?
Yes.
Great, let's do it.
Okay. Thank you, Joy.
So our last item is action item 6A for bridge aid.
Take your time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did receive a bridge aid application from the town of Farmington for a bridge on Trading Post Trail. This bridge is looking at being constructed in the year 2022. Supervisor Bishop did call me yesterday and did point out that the bridge cost is looking at 1.27. And why is that 700,000 number not 80%? And so when you do bridge applications, you got to do them several years ahead of time. For instance, they're doing the bridge applications right now. We're due back in the beginning of October, and they're looking at a construction timeline of roughly 2026 or 2027. So you're doing those estimates several years in advance. The DOT does not like to include inflation in their prices. They have to use today's dollars. So with that, the town of Farmington looked at and certainly there is someone here that is much more in tune with the town of Farmington and can speak up on this as well. Looked at that original estimate and said it's probably a little bit on the low side now from 2018. And I would agree with them. Our County Highway H Bridge, which is going up east of 45, that came in at 1.6 million. That's now a 130-foot bridge. Theirs is a 100-foot bridge. And so you can see 1.6 million and take off 400,000. It's pretty close. Their estimates probably not too far off. Once you throw in the bridge construction, the engineering, the construction inspection, stuff like that. So you throw all that stuff on there. I do agree that their revised estimates of 1.274 is probably a pretty good estimate based on today's dollars and the bridge we just had bid out last month. So with that, I think that they're being proactive and looking at that from a standpoint. The other piece of the puzzle is what's called change management. You can go back to the DOT to ask for that difference in cost. They most likely will not do that now. For us in the past in Washington County, they won't do the change now based on an estimate. They're going to wait for the actual construction bid to come in and then make the change one time versus making a change now and then potentially in spring have to make the change a second time. That's been our experience with change management. They're reluctant to do it based off an estimate because who's doing the estimate? Well, I'm doing the estimate. Well, am I going to be low or high? I'm probably going to be high, right? To make sure we're covered. And so they're most likely to wait for bids. But talking to the town chairman yesterday, they are willing to go through the change management process to hopefully get that up to 80%. The DOT makes it very clear when you sign that agreement, back in 2018, in this case, I believe it was maybe 19, that 19, 17 maybe, right? So like I said, there's several years of lag time between that, they sign that agreement. They make it very clear it's up to 80%. Not guaranteeing you the 80%. That's right in the document, up to 80%. And so that's why they have that change management process. So we're very hopeful. And I think it is in the benefit, it is in the interest of the town as well. Get them, or they're paying half of that remainder too, that they can get their remainder down and get the county's portion. Again, it's not county levy money. That's the levy that goes on every town resident, in Washington County. It's a separate fund than the levy amount that it's in their interest on their taxpayers in their town and other towns to have that as low as possible. I have every confidence that they will be going through the change management process up there in the town of Farmington to try to get that to an 80-20 split. But again, it probably won't happen until after the bids come out. But then by allowing this higher amount, that they won't have to come back to the committee and board a second time. And they only get the money when the bills come in, right? We don't just write them a check for the $250,000 now and say, hey, good luck to you. Get done what you can. The bills actually go through the state of Wisconsin, go to the town, and then come to us. So it's not like they just can just pocket the extra money. It does. There's a line of checks and balances there to make sure they get what they want. But I think it's in the interest of the town. I think it's a good idea to come up with that revised estimate based on several years of lag. If it was 2017, having the estimate now to 2022 and knowing what our bridge on just down the road came in at, I'm pretty confident their number is not far off.
So the bottom line is we could go up to 250,000 as our part of this, but it'll probably be somewhere around half that.
I am hopeful in the change management process with the state. We would certainly be more than willing to provide assistance with the town with that application and any assistance they need to make sure that goes through. We have done with numerous other towns with their projects and funding and stuff like that. So we would definitely offer up that service from our thing to try to, as best we can, to push that through, because it saves all the taxpayers and town taxpayers in Washington County money. So we definitely would want the town to do that. And the town is, I believe, committed to do that.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Any questions or comments? If not, I'd look for a motion. Mr. Shadron, Supervisor Shadron. A second? I'll second. Any more discussion? Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, motion passes. This goes to the county board for consideration, I believe. So,
Yes.
so then you want to talk about the next meeting?
Yes, I did allude to this earlier, that if we are looking at having a public hearing for the ridership change, we will be looking at moving the November meeting from the 23rd, I believe it was, on that Wednesday morning to potentially the following Wednesday in the evening, just to allow for public to actually be here and provide the comments on that transportation, any changes to that plan. We're certainly open up to the time that you'd like. And if it's not Wednesday, we certainly can make Tuesday or Thursday happen, and just figured to keep it on Wednesday nights because we talked to the clerks and that this room was open that night.
So anybody have a thought on the time? For public hearing, is 6 good or? Pardon?
Well, we have, people that are working. So I think 5 o'clock would probably be the earliest I would recommend, because if they're working down in Milwaukee,
I'm good with either.
that's fair. I mean, they can also write written comments as well. If they're not able to make it, we certainly would, if it's the chair's purview, read those into the minutes at that time too. So if they can't make it that night for whatever reason.
And if this goes over well, we can do all future ones.
So let's say 5:30 on December 1st.
And that'll be our regular November meeting.
So. Sure. Hmm, 22nd would be okay for me, I think. Yeah, that's clear. Yeah, the first, yeah.
So that's better than the 29th.
I know we didn't put it on our agenda, but you want to talk about road school too? or should we wait until after? Okay.